I hate myself. 3 little words. That was how all this started. And that was how it ended. I met Quincy on an online dating website. No, not a dating app. This was the early 2000s, and it would be a few more years before the first smartphones came along. It was a pretty rough time for me. Things weren't going well at work, and to top it all off, my living situation with my roommate was rapidly deteriorating. She had a new boyfriend who was spending more and more time there, and let's just say I really didn't get along with him. I tried to spend as much time as I could out of my apartment. Overtime at work, the gym, libraries, bars. And when I did get home, I'd rush straight into my room and not come out for anything but the bathroom until morning. It was a terrible way to live. I was at work when I got Quincy's first message. It was really slow that day, so whenever my boss wasn't around, I played flash games on my computer. Remember those? Eventually, though, I got bored of that and finally decided to check my messages on the dating site. I had set up my profile on the site a year or so ago, but it quickly became apparent that it was going to be a bust. In an entire year, I had been on maybe 3 dates. Those guys were nice enough, but there just wasn't any spark. Mostly, my inbox was full of creeps and weirdos asking for pictures of my feet or to buy my underwear, or worse. Gross, but inevitable for a woman on the internet, even back then. Quincy's message came as a real breath of fresh air. So did his photo. Tall, glasses, freckles, looked a bit on the nerdy side. Most importantly, I could tell he had taken the time to actually read through my profile. He commented on the book series I was reading and said he liked it, but in his opinion, it had really started to drop off after book 3. I agreed, so I decided to take a chance on returning his contact request. We started messaging back and forth. He was a Gryffindor. I was a Ravenclaw. He agreed that Lord of the Rings movies were better than the books. He said I made a compelling case for Janeway as best captain, but that he still liked Jean-Luc the best. It was a litany of shared interests and fun conversation. Around noon, I gave him my AIM. He was also bored at work, so we spent most of the afternoon messaging each other. He had a great sense of humor. More than once, he had me snickering at my desk, drawing looks from some of my coworkers. As my workday drew to a close, we had reached the subject of our favorite foods. I stated that I was a steak connoisseur. There was a long pause after that. I wondered whether I had made some horrible faux pas and he had dropped me. Then he asked me something that made me blink with surprise.
Hey, I know this is kind of sudden, but can I take you out to dinner tonight? There's a steakhouse I've been wanting to try.
I stared at his message for a long time. I usually like to talk to guys for at least a few days before meeting them in person. It was the best way to filter out the creeps and the weirdos. On the other hand, an extra few hours out on a date would mean fewer hours in my apartment avoiding my roommate's shitty boyfriend. Plus, I could really go for a good steak just then. Spending so much time outside my apartment didn't leave me much time for cooking, and I wasn't exactly flush with cash, so I was getting really sick of cup noodles. That sounds great, smiley face.
Need a ride?
Nah, I can get there.
Great, I'll make reservations.
That first date was great. Quincy was even better looking in person than he was in his profile pictures. The poor guy really didn't know how to take a selfie. But he was every bit as funny IRL as he was on the internet. And at a few points, he had me laughing so hard that we were starting to get looks from the other tables. But at the same time, he also had a kind of adorable shyness about him. So many guys I dated tended to be overconfident to the point of arrogance, and a little humility was really refreshing. The steakhouse he took me to was downtown and really fancy. I did offer to split the bill with him, but was definitely relieved when he insisted on treating me. I think I surprised both him and the waiter by ordering my steak blue rare. What can I say? Bloody and mooing was just how I liked it. A lot of guys will try to one-up me and order the same when I do that, but not Quincy. He ordered his medium, but asked if he could try some of mine when it came. I was happy to oblige, and when our orders came, he asked me to explain what to look for in a good steak and the different wellness levels, and listened patiently while I explained it all to him. When I gave him a little bite of my blue rare filet mignon, he chewed thoughtfully for a second, and then said it might be an acquired taste. I laughed a little at that. After dinner, he walked me to my car, said he had a good time, and tried to shake my hand. I hugged him and kissed his cheek instead. He called me later that night to make sure I'd gotten home okay, asked how I was feeling about the date, and asked whether he could see me again. So many guys do that stupid thing where they don't call you for a few days after a date to avoid seeming too interested in you. Quincy wasn't like that. He didn't play stupid mind games. He was just sincere. I definitely said yes to a second date. It was the morning after our third date when things took a turn with my living situation. It was just after 7 a.m. I was in my workout clothes, intending to shower and change for work at the gym. I shut the door to my room behind me as quietly as I could. I could hear my roommate's boyfriend, Brian, snoring on the couch in the living room. I was on my way out the door when my stomach growled. I was so hungry. Normally, I'd eat some oatmeal or something at my desk when I got into work, but today I wondered if I could chance a quick meal without waking up Brian. I stood there for a long moment trying to decide, and today, I decided I would risk it. It was my apartment too, after all. I set my gym bag down by the door and tiptoed back to the kitchen, synchronizing each step with Brian's snores. I grabbed a cup of noodles out of the cupboard, poured in the water, and put it in the microwave, shutting the door as gently as I could. Luckily, it was an older model with a knob instead of the newer kind that beeped every time you pushed a button. I set the timer for 3 minutes, intending to stop it at the 1 second mark so the bell wouldn't go off. I was so focused on the timer ticking down that I did not notice that Brian's snoring from the living room had stopped. Just before the microwave went off, I manually stopped it, took out my noodles, and turned around. Ah!
Hey, Mina.
I yelped in surprise, spilling a bit of the boiling water on my hand. Brian was standing there, leaning against the fridge, partially to look casual, but mostly, I expected, for support. I could smell the alcohol in his breath from the other side of the kitchen. Hello, Brian, I said, sucking on the burn on my hand. I went to the sink to run my hand under cold water. Maybe if I ignored him, he'd leave me alone this time.
Sorry. Didn't mean to scare you there.
With a sinking feeling in my stomach, I heard him approach me from behind, standing way, way too close for comfort.
Here, let me help.
He reached around me to take my hand. "No, that's okay, I was just leaving." I spun around from him and made for the door, my noodles just sitting on the counter, forgotten. I'd almost made it there when Brian grabbed my hand with a speed that belied his drunkenness and yanked me back. Ah! Huh? I yelped, off balance, and found myself with my back against the wall, Brian's arms braced on either side of me. "Excuse you?" Ugh. He was so close, and the alcohol smell on his breath was so strong now that I thought I might vomit.
You know, me and Stacy got to talking last night.
Brian continued, his eyes hungrily roaming down my body. I was suddenly feeling very exposed in my sports top and yoga pants. "Let go of me, Brian," I struggled to free my hand. My heart was pounding in my chest.
We both think you're pretty hot. And we've been thinking about adding a third. And don't think I haven't seen the way you've been looking at me.
I said, And that's when it happened. Suddenly, his gross, disgusting mouth was all over mine, and his gross, disgusting hands were all over me, and he was just pushing and grinding himself against me. And I just froze. Run! Scream, fight, do something! My mind was screaming at me to kick out his knees and palm heel strike his nose and rake his eyes and do all the other things I'd learned in my women's self-defense class. I'd run through this scenario 100 times in my head. But now that it was actually happening, I couldn't do anything. After what was either 10 seconds or 100 years, it was over. Brian backed away and just stood there, a stupid little smile on his face.
Finally. That wasn't so bad now, was it?
Without meeting his eye, I grabbed my gym bag and walked out the door. I don't remember driving to the office. I must have been on autopilot. The next thing I remember, I was sitting in the parking lot, still hours before we opened. My engine still running and my hands on the wheel. And I suddenly realized I could still taste the alcohol from his mouth and mine. I just managed to get the door open before I vomited. I was a wreck at work that morning. From the time we opened to about 10 o'clock, I think I just stared blankly at my monitor in a daze. It wasn't until Quincy messaged me that I broke out of my stupor.
Good morning, beautiful. How you doing?
The question jolted me out of that stupor and reminded me that I was actually not okay. When I got off work that night, I could go to the gym or the library or the rec center, but at some point, I was gonna have to go back to my apartment, and Brian would be there, and he would probably do the same thing again. Or worse. I couldn't afford to break my lease. I had no family or friends I could crash with. I had no options. I was stuck. And Quincy, who seemed nice enough, but whom I'd only gone on 3 dates with, seemed like the only person in the world who might actually give a damn about me and my situation. Not good, actually. Really not good.
What happened?
I told him everything. Afterwards, the screen stayed still for a long time while he decided what to say next.
Jesus, Mina. Are you hurt? Do you need to go to the hospital?
No.
You can't go back there.
I don't know what else to do.
Do you have any friends you can stay with?
No. Another long pause.
Listen, I know it's kind of sudden and whatever, but do you want to come stay with me? At least until you can work something else out?
I had another sinking feeling in my stomach. Quincy seemed nice enough on the 3 dates we'd been on, but moving in with him, even temporarily, seemed like way too much too fast. And after what I'd just been through, I was reluctant to give any other men 24/7 access to me. It seemed like this was always happening to me. I was always fleeing some bad situation or another by moving in with some guy who always turned out to be just as bad or worse. Still, given the choice between living with one guy who might be a creep and another guy who definitely was, the choice was clear. Well, the illusion of choice, anyway. Okay.
Will your roommate's boyfriend be at work right now?
Yes.
When does he usually get home?
Around 7. A long pause. Minutes went by. I thought he had left. Then,
Can you take the rest of the day off?
and that's how it happened. I went to my boss and asked for the rest of the day off. I was clearly a mess, so she instantly agreed. I gave Quincy the address of my apartment complex, and he met me there, his Subaru already packed full of empty moving boxes. Even though Brian's car wasn't there, and I knew he wasn't home, I still didn't want to go back there by myself. Quincy offered to go up first to make sure no one was home, and waved me up once he made sure the coast was clear. Then I changed out of my work clothes, he rolled up his sleeves, and we got to work, boxing up all my stuff, bagging up all my clothes, and carrying it out to our cars. We worked fast. We probably could have done it faster if we'd done the sensible thing and let me do all the packing up and Quincy do all the driving. But I didn't want to be left alone. Quincy seemed to pick up on this and didn't suggest it and didn't complain. He didn't complain about anything, actually. Even when I accidentally packed the boxes way too full with my clothes and sewing machines and bric-a-brac for any one person to lift easily, he just waved my apologies away and asked again and again if I needed his help with anything else, if I was drinking enough water, how I was doing. I admit, I had frankly an alarming amount of stuff for such a small apartment. Between our 2 cars, it took us 4 trips and late into the afternoon to get everything boxed up and moved over to Quincy's house. Then we had to make one last trip to do a deep clean. I did the vacuuming, Quincy did all the scrubbing and dusting and everything else. When we were done, Quincy took pictures of everything on his camera phone so I could be sure to get my deposit back. And just like that, we were done, with 45 minutes to spare. We were both sweaty and exhausted by the time we got back to his house. There were boxes of my stuff everywhere since there hadn't been time to organize anything. Quincy put on a brave face, but I could tell he was really sore from lifting heavy boxes all day. He ordered pizza, and we took turns in the shower while we waited for it to arrive. He let me borrow some of his sweatpants and a t-shirt, since there was no telling where any of my clothes had ended up. We sat on opposite sides of the couch while we ate, and watched one of his DVDs. After that, I discovered I was absolutely exhausted, emotionally and physically, from the day's events. Quincy had already made up the spare bedroom for me with fresh sheets, towels, and toiletries.
Anything else you need?
He stood in the doorway while I sat on the bed in the guest room. He seemed nervous. No, I met his eyes. I don't know how to thank you for everything you did today.
No problem. And, about that,
He shifted and wrung his hands together.
I don't want you to think... I know it's a weird situation, moving in with someone you just met. I don't know if it needs to be said or not, but just in case, I just want you to know that just because you're staying here, I'm not expecting anything in return, okay? I do really like you, and I am interested in you romantically, and I hope our relationship progresses, but I also want to give you your space, if that's what you need right now. And if things don't work out between us, I'm also not going to kick you out or anything. You can stay here as long as you need to, okay?
I blinked at him as he finished his unexpected monologue. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded.
Okay. Well, good night then.
Good night. I chewed my lip and thought. After a long moment's consideration, I came to 2 conclusions. One, that Quincy actually was a great guy, and this was nothing like the last time I'd moved in with a guy to escape a bad situation. 2, that I was falling for him really, really hard. And 3, that while I was grateful that he'd offered, space was actually not what I needed right then. I stood up and followed him to his bedroom. And that's how it happened. Honestly, I think we were both trying really hard not to fall head over heels for each other. Neither of us were strangers to falling for someone too hard and too fast and getting burned. I think both of us were keenly aware of what we were feeling for each other might just be the result of being unexpectedly thrown into a living situation. I knew that new relationship energy was a hell of a drug. I knew that love could make you stupid. I knew that love could make you crazy. I knew it was only natural to fall for the guy who literally swooped in on a white horse and rescued me from a monster. Slow down, take it easy, don't rush, take your time, my head was telling me. We went through the motions of pretending that our living situation was only temporary. Quincy would message me apartment listings he found on the internet that he thought looked good and were within my price range while I was at work. For my part, I emailed a few of the landlords and even went to see a few in person. In the evenings, I unpacked all my boxes. Not into the closet in Quincy's guest room, not into his bedroom, just organizing and consolidating them and getting rid of what I didn't need anymore so that when it did come time to move out, it wouldn't be so chaotic. But the guest bed that Quincy had so thoughtfully made up for me continued to go unused. For 2 whole weeks, we went on like this. Then one morning while I was at work, he messaged me a link to yet another apartment listing. Instead of replying with a "thanks, you're the best" and a smiley face like I usually did, I waited 2 hours while I considered my reply. "Do you want me to move out?" I didn't get a reply until after lunch.
No, I love you, and I want you to stay with me forever.
This time, I replied instantly. I had already done all the thinking I needed to. I love you too. That night, Quincy helped me unpack all my boxes. Not back into other boxes this time, and not into his guest bedroom either. My clothes went into our bedroom closet, and into our dresser. My knickknacks and keepsakes went onto our shelves, onto our walls, and onto our coffee table. My hairbrushes and toothpaste and shampoos and conditioners all went into our bathroom. By the time we were done, we were both filthy and sweaty again. But this time, we didn't take turns with the shower. Slow down, don't rush, you'll be sorry, my head was still telling me. Shut up, you, I snapped back. We were just sitting on the couch watching TV one night the first time I encountered Quincy's tic.
I hate myself.
What? Quincy winced and shut his eyes tight. What did you say? He sighed and muted the TV.
Well, I guess you were bound to find out sooner or later. I have sort of a nervous tic, I guess you could say. Sometimes I just blurt out, I hate myself, or something like that, at random times. I went to a psychiatrist about it once, and he said I probably have an inferiority complex. I've tried all sorts of things to get it to stop, but nothing helped. I literally can't help myself.
He sighed again and dropped his head, not meeting my eye.
I can usually control it when I'm at work and stuff. It usually only comes out around people that I'm comfortable with. Sort of when my guard is down, you know? So, there's that.
He cautiously looked back at me.
You probably think I'm some kind of weirdo.
He looked so sad in that moment, like he expected me to get up and walk out of his life forever now that I knew his deep, dark secret. Instead, I leaned over and kissed him and snuggled up against his shoulder. Well, I think you're wonderful, so you shouldn't hate yourself. I could feel him physically relax again.
Thank you. I think you're wonderful too.
Weeks turned into months. Even though we hadn't been together that long, Quincy just completed me in a way no one ever had before. He was everything I could have asked for. Tall, good-looking, a little shy, but incredibly sweet. I knew what new relationship energy felt like, and this was so much more than that. During the day, we were always messaging each other on AIM on our work computers when our bosses weren't around, and work suddenly became a lot more bearable. When we got home from work each night, I usually did most of the cooking, but he took his turns too. Though burgers or casserole were just about the only two dishes he could consistently make well. But he always cleaned up every night without complaining. After dinner, we would usually watch TV or a movie or play Mario Kart, or sometimes we would just cuddle on the couch and read our books together. On weekends, we would go on walks, go out to dinner, movies, or concerts. Everything was perfect. His tic never bothered me. It would usually happen 2 or 3 times a night, or more if he was having a bad day.
I hate myself.
I love you.
I love you too.
Then I would squeeze his hand, and we'd go on with whatever we were doing. Sometimes it'd happen while we were out in public, during a concert or at the theater or whatever. There, he could at least usually keep it under his breath, or say it so softly that someone who didn't know him like I did wouldn't even hear it. But I could always tell. When it happened, I'd just squeeze his hand, and even if we didn't say anything out loud, the conversation would still play out in our minds, just as clearly as if we had.
I hate myself.
I love you.
I love you too.
One day when it happened, I got curious.
I hate myself.
I love you. I squeezed his hand like I always did, then paused for a second and thought. What happens when you do that? Like, what's going through your head?
Oh.
He had to pause the movie we were watching while he thought about it.
I guess usually what happens is something will remind me of some mistake I made in the past. Like something embarrassing I did, something cringe. Or sometimes... something bigger.
Oh. I took a moment to process all that. So, the one you did a minute ago? What brought that on? What were you thinking about? I could see him mentally rewinding his thoughts. Eventually, he looked back to the TV, and that jolted his memory.
Ah!
He gestured to the movie we were watching, which was currently on a restaurant scene.
One time I asked the waitress what kind of tea they had, and she looked at me like I had 2 heads. It was awkward.
I cocked my head to the side in confusion. That's it? You remember that after all these years?
I know, it's dumb.
Like, I can promise you nobody remembers that encounter but you.
I know. I never said it made sense. Look, if you want a boyfriend who isn't a complete nutcase, you're just gonna have to look somewhere else.
He said things like that a lot. Self-deprecating jokes, or little digs at himself. He'd always play it off, but I could also tell he meant it. It was just his way. Deep down, I think he really did hate himself. I think he was partly fishing for reassurance that I wasn't going to leave him, but also, he legitimately wanted to remind me that he'd understand if I did. I leaned across the couch and hugged him tight. I don't want anybody else. I want you. I just wished you loved yourself the same way I love you. We stayed like that for a long time. Me just laying on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, him holding me tight. I felt a few tears fall into my hair. Do you think it would help if you talked about it? I finally asked.
How do you mean?
Like, whenever you do that, do you think it might help to tell me what brought it on? What you were thinking about?
Oh.
He scrunched his brow and thought.
It might. I've never tried that before. Half the time I don't even remember what it was.
Are you willing to try it? For me? He looked at me, choked up a bit, and then nodded.
Thank you.
So that's what I did. Anytime he did the tic, I would ask him what he was remembering. It seemed to happen a lot while we were watching TV.
I hate myself.
I squeezed his hand. I love you. What was it this time? We were watching a movie again. He pointed to the freeze frame of Ben Stiller.
I met the parents of the girl I was dating. It went about as well as this is.
I squeezed his hand. Well, I'm your girlfriend now. You can probably let that one go. He chuckled.
Thanks.
One time we were leaving the grocery store together.
I hate myself.
I squeezed his hand. I love you. What was it that time?
Oh. One time I was checking out at a grocery store, and all of a sudden I couldn't remember my PIN number. It was very embarrassing.
I used to work as a cashier, babe. Believe me, that happens all the time. He sighed.
I know.
One time we were waiting in line at a coffee shop.
I hate myself.
I squeezed his hand. I love you. What was that one?
One time I was at a Starbucks, and after the barista took my order, she said something to me, but I couldn't hear her with all the noise. I think my hearing isn't so good.
He gestured to a worker behind the counter who was working a coffee grinder.
I think my hearing isn't so good after Iraq. After the third time I asked her to repeat herself, I just smiled and laughed. She looked disappointed.
Aw, babe. I kissed his cheek. I bet she was flirting with you on account of you're such a hunk. He rolled his eyes, but I think it made him feel a little better. After a few months of this, I really got a good picture of the whole life of the man I loved. Quincy had such a tremendous empathy for others, to the point where he would feel awful for every minor inconvenience he caused anyone, ever. And he just couldn't ever let it go. Then the fact that he couldn't let it go fed into his inferiority complex more and more, and the whole thing just turned into a spiral. I felt so bad for him. It was a terrible way to live. I wanted so badly to be able to help him. Eventually, I got pretty good at guessing which specific memory was triggered by which specific event. One time, we were in line to get snacks at the movie theater.
I hate myself.
I love you. That time you got in the wrong line at the airport and the TSA guy yelled at you?
Yep. I hate myself.
I love you. That time the cute girl asked you for a lighter, so you gave her yours, but it was out of fuel?
Yep.
Sometimes, when I already knew what had brought out a particular tic and what had caused it, I wouldn't bother asking. I'd just squeeze his hand, and the unspoken conversation played out clearly in our minds, just as it always did.
I hate myself.
I love you.
I love you too.
One day, my car broke down, so Quincy had to pick me up from work. I ended up having to stay a few extra minutes to finish up some last-minute tasks. When I finally started making my way up to the reception area where he was waiting, I could hear Lucy's loud, boisterous laugh long before I got there. Lucy was the lady who worked at the front desk and my best friend at work. She had one of those friendly, bubbly personalities that could instantly make anyone feel at ease, and having even one friendly face to see every day was so nice back when I was first finding my feet there. As I got closer to the reception area, I saw that Quincy was wrapping up a story that apparently had her in stitches. Her enormous chest bounced as she laughed. It wasn't hard to see why my boss put her in reception. I admit, I was always a little jealous of her looks. They both looked up at me as I approached.
Hey, sweetie.
Lucy waved at me.
Girl, you didn't tell me that your new man was hilarious.
Hey, Lucy. Yeah, he's all right, I guess. I smirked at Quincy and kissed him to make sure he knew I was joking.
That's not what you said last night.
He said, then laughed as I punched his arm. Lucy laughed as she waved us goodbye.
Bye, you two. Have a good night now. It was nice meeting you, Quincy.
Nice meeting you too.
Quincy waved back. As we walked out the door, Lucy made a point of staring at Quincy's ass.
Look at him go. Girl, can you break me off a piece of that?
Good night, Lucy. I rolled my eyes, closing the door behind me.
Well, she seems nice.
Nice, I said dubiously, narrowing my eyes at him.
Yeah, you know, she's got great, big, bouncing... Ow!
He laughed, recoiling from my second punch.
Personality! I was gonna say personality!
Sure you were. Come on, Casanova. That was the thing with Quincy. He could be absolutely charming and hilarious when the situation called for it, but it did seem to take a lot out of him. After any sort of big social occasion, he would always need a few hours by himself to sort of recharge. He didn't know it, but he could actually get any woman he wanted if he could ever get over his shyness. I felt so lucky to have him. He started the car and reached for his seatbelt.
I was thinking tonight maybe...
I cut him off mid-sentence when I grabbed him by the collar and pulled him in for a long kiss. Yeah, I was lucky to have Quincy. But he was also lucky to have me too. I didn't actually feel threatened by Lucy, but it was good to remind him where we both stood every now and then. There were some tics I couldn't get Quincy to talk about. One time, we were watching an old Western movie, and one of the bad guys on screen got shot, screamed, then fell out of the window. The tic came instantaneously.
I hate myself.
I love you. What was that one for? He didn't answer right away. Instead, his eyes went far away for a moment.
Iraq stuff.
Quincy didn't like talking about his time in the military, so I didn't pry. And anyway, I could guess well enough what had happened there. But over time, I also started to notice a pattern to the stuff he wouldn't talk about. And this is where our problems first started. We were watching the news.
In our lead story tonight, an update on a missing persons case that has gripped the county. The Sheriff's Department announced today that it has recovered the vehicle of Zara Valencia, a local 25-year-old nurse who went missing from her home without a trace nearly 1 year ago. A local hiker discovered the vehicle in the creek near the junction of State Route 140 and Cedar Avenue.
Wow, that's not far from here. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Didn't you say your ex's name was Zara?
I hate myself.
What was that one for? He paused a long time before answering.
Nothing.
I didn't pry any further. I trusted Quincy, and Quincy trusted me. If it was something important, he would tell me in due time. But since I was laying on his chest at the time, it was not hard to notice that his heart was suddenly racing. There was a nice wooded area not far from our house where we used to walk sometimes, maybe 100 acres or so, that used to be part of an old cherry orchard. The land had been bought by a developer years ago with plans to put in yet another strip mall and rows of McMansions, but groundbreaking hadn't started yet. So for the moment, it was just a nice secret little area that wasn't labeled on any map. We'd walk a short ways on the dirt road that surrounded the place, hop over a fire gate, and we were there. It was technically trespassing, but we weren't too worried. We called it Terabithia, after the book. It was beautiful. The grass grew wild and green. There were lots of wildflowers, cherry trees, and a little creek that ran right through the middle. Sometimes we'd bring our books and just sit under a tree, reading together and listening to the birds. We were both sad that it was all going to get bulldozed someday, but for a while it lasted. It was our own little slice of heaven, a special, secret place just for us. One day, as we were walking on the fire road on our way to Terabithia, I noticed a trail where someone had ducked under the barbed wire fence and cut a path around the hill. It wasn't a part of Terabithia that we usually went to, since the fence was harder to get through there. Uh-oh, looks like someone else discovered our little secret.
Huh?
Quincy pushed his glasses up to see where I was pointing, off into the distance where the trail of trampled grass disappeared around the hill.
Oh, yeah, I hate myself.
I looked at him, surprised. What was that one? He looked away.
Nothing. Forget it.
I stared at him for a long moment. He wouldn't meet my eye. When the silence became unbearable for him, he cleared his throat and changed the subject.
So, how about I make dinner tonight? Casserole okay?
I watched him squirm for another long moment under my gaze. I'd never seen him be evasive like this, and I did not like it. Casserole sounds nice. A few days later, we were just getting ready to go for a walk. I went into the bedroom to change out of my work clothes. When I came back, I saw Quincy staring at the newspaper, apparently deep in thought. "Ready to go, babe?" He didn't answer, just kept staring at the newspaper. Babe. He startled.
Oh, sorry.
He folded the newspaper quickly.
Just let me use the bathroom real quick, then we can go.
He scurried off to the bathroom. Curious, I flipped the newspaper back open to see what he had been so interested in. And there it was, on page 2. Beneath the half-page ad for a local jeweler was another update on the Zara Valencia case.
Local university partners with police to utilize cutting-edge DNA phenotyping in search for murder suspect. In a groundbreaking collaboration, the local police department has teamed up with experts from the nearby university to utilize cutting-edge DNA phenotyping technology in the ongoing search for a suspect in the murder of Zara Valencia. This innovative approach marks a significant step forward in the field of forensic investigation, raising hopes that this case may soon be solved. The technology developed by researchers at the university's state-of-the-art genetics lab allows investigators to create a composite image of a suspect based on DNA evidence left at the crime scene. By analyzing specific genetic markers, scientists can predict physical characteristics such as eye color, hair color, and even certain facial features. This technology has the potential to revolutionize the way we approach criminal investigations, says lead researcher Dr. Jane Thompson. While traditional DNA analysis can help identify suspects who are already in the system, DNA phenotyping can provide valuable leads in cases where there are no known suspects. The police department, eager to explore all avenues in the search for Zara Valencia's killer, reached out to the university's genetics lab after months of searching for the perpetrator. With the help of the research team and DNA evidence recovered from the scene, they were able to determine a few key physical characteristics of the person of interest. Police now say they are looking for a Caucasian male with green eyes, freckles, curly brown hair, and likely wears glasses due to a genetic predilection for farsightedness. Police were quick to caution the public that this groundbreaking new phenotyping technology is still in its infancy.
My blood froze in my veins. I almost jumped out of my skin when I heard the toilet flush. I hurried around to the other side of the island and pretended to read my book.
Sorry about that. Ready to go?
Quincy turned to me, pushing his glasses up his freckled nose to peer at me with his green eyes. He tucked a lock of his curly brown hair under his ball cap.
Babe?
I smiled at him. Yeah, I'm coming. A month later, my car was in the shop again, so Quincy had to take me to and from work all week while the shop waited for the part to come in. Every day I'd come out from the back and find him and Lucy chatting it up like two old friends. That Friday, though, I finished my work early. I came out from the back to find Quincy and Lucy whispering about something. Quincy was leaning far over the front desk, where I'm sure he was getting an excellent view down Lucy's very low-cut dress. I cleared my throat, and they both jumped.
Hi, babe. Ready to go?
Quincy stammered. I didn't say anything, but made for the door. He opened it for me, but instead of walking through, I just shoved him ahead of me.
Bye, baby. See you tomorrow.
Lucy waved. I said nothing and closed the door to the corridor a little harder than was strictly necessary. And that's how it started. The suspicions, the distrust. I wanted to tell myself that my Quincy would never cheat on me. But did I really believe that Quincy, or any man really, would resist the attention of someone as beautiful as Lucy? I also wanted to tell myself that Mike Quincy could never kill someone. But then I remembered his time in Iraq. I wondered how different it was for someone like him, killing an enemy combatant and killing a girlfriend who was beginning to ask a few too many questions. Wasn't it always the quiet ones? I still loved Quincy, but it was like a splinter in your finger that you can't ignore no matter how hard you try. And over time, that splinter begins to fester. Weeks went by. It was a weird time for me. I flip-flopped between vaguely suspecting that my boyfriend might be a serial killer who was hooking up with a receptionist at work, to thinking I was crazy, that this man who worshipped the ground I walked on would never hurt a fly, and I loved him more than anything. Over time, though, my feelings slowly started to shift. There was a definite pattern to the tics he told me about. It was like he was constantly in a state of war with his own thoughts. Consciously, he might have known that it was a good and kind person who was worthy of love, as I told him so often. His subconscious, however, was so convinced of his own worthlessness that any small mistake he ever made or any small inconvenience he had ever caused another person was cause for ever more self-hatred and scorn. I wondered, though, if, aside from his tics, there were any other dark impulses he couldn't control, or if perhaps there were things in his past that he regretted that went beyond things like social awkwardness. As time went on, however, I equally began to notice a pattern to the tics he didn't want to talk about. He would tic every time someone got shot in a movie that we were watching. I was a steak connoisseur and liked them blue, rare, and bloody, and Quincy began to tic every time I sank my knife into one. He ticked when he was out in the garden, nearly every time he sank a shovel into the earth. He would tic whenever the news talked about Zara Valencia. And he never wanted to talk about those tics, no matter how many times I asked. I had my suspicions about what all those tics were about, of course. But there were other tics that he did where I had absolutely no idea what was going through his mind. Why on earth would he tic every time we talked about that one spot in the fence on our way to Terabithia? Like, maybe it was a little thing, and maybe I was making too much of it, but it was really starting to get on my nerves. "Let's go for a walk," I'd say. He'd freeze.
Okay. By the river?
"I'm tired of the river. Let's go to Terabithia." His gaze would drop to the floor.
I'd rather not.
"Why not, babe?" I'd ask, knowing damn well why not.
You know why not, Mina. Please?
"I am tired of walking by the river, Quincy," I'd say, letting a note of annoyance creep into my voice. And then he'd sigh and cave in, because at the end of the day, he always gave me everything I asked for. So we'd walk down to Terabithia. And on the way there and the way back, he'd say, "I hate myself," in the exact same spot. And I'd ask him what brought it on, and he'd deflect and refuse to tell me. Like, it was such a stupid thing to keep a secret about. Wasn't I an understanding and supportive partner for him? Who else would put up with his psycho nonsense? Here I was, trying to help him out with his stupid neuroses by being his own personal unpaid psychiatrist so he could maybe stop being such a loser, and this is the thanks I got? What possible reason could he have to keep this one stupid secret from me? It got bad. We could be having a good day. One of the days where I thought I loved this man more than anything in the world. But as soon as we get close to Terabithia, both of our moods would start to shift. We'd get close to the spot, and I'd just stare at him, waiting for it. Of course, he would notice me staring, and that would make him even more nervous, and then he'd try to cover up his tic with a cough or something. Pathetic. I don't know. Maybe it was petty of me. It's true that I didn't like walking down by the river as much as I liked Terabithia. But more than that, I think what I missed was what Terabithia used to mean to the two of us. It was a simpler time, before all the suspicion and distrust, before Zara Valencia. It was just him and me and our infinite love for each other and our special place that was just for us. I think part of the reason I kept dragging him down there was I just wanted him to tell me what was really going on. If he had killed Zara Valencia, and that was where he had hid her body. Honestly, I think I'd have at least heard him out. Who knows? Maybe it was self-defense? This love that I felt for Quincy was like nothing I'd ever felt before, and if he could just tell me the truth, I would have stood by him through hell or high water. Yet no matter how many times I dragged him down there, he would never be honest with me. So, yeah, I rubbed his face in it a bit. We had been doing this same song and dance for months now, and it hadn't helped his tics at all. If anything, they were getting worse. Asking about them all the time started to become a chore, and by now I knew every single awkward interaction he'd ever had with another human being in his entire life. There were no surprises anymore. The time in 9th grade where your voice cracked in math class, I know. Your first day at the new job when they made you stand in front of everybody to thank you for your service, I know. The time you told a joke at the start of a meeting and nobody laughed, I know. Yeah. His takes were starting to grate on my nerves. Like, really? You were traumatized by that time the guy at the movie theater said, "Enjoy your movie," and you said, "You too"? It was pathetic. Sometimes, when I was really annoyed at him, I'd hear him tick under his breath, and I would deliberately not reach over to squeeze his hand. Our telepathic conversation would still play out like it always did. But now it was a little different.
I hate myself.
I hate you too.
I hate myself.
The time you dropped your wallet in the middle of the crosswalk, and all the cars had to wait for you to pick up all your cards.
Mina!
I turned to face Quincy on the couch. We were watching a movie like we usually did in the evenings, but I wasn't snuggled against him anymore. I was leaning against the other arm of the couch, snacking on my popcorn, not sharing with him. Quincy took a few deep breaths.
You don't have to do that anymore if you don't want to. It's fine.
I narrowed my eyes at him. Don't be silly, sweetheart. You asked me to help you, so that's what I'm doing. Because I love you. The sarcasm in my voice cut him like a knife through a perfectly cooked blue rare steak. He stared at me for a moment, then ran off into the bathroom, muttering to himself the whole way.
I hate myself, 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 I hate myself.
I finished the movie alone that night. Quincy did not come to bed until long after I had fallen asleep. I didn't see Quincy at breakfast the next day. He must have left early while I was still in the shower. But when I came home from work that night, I saw that Quincy had gone all out on dinner.
Hi, babe.
He took off his apron. There was genuine happiness and hopefulness in his voice, but he also sounded exhausted. There was no way he could have done all this in the hour that it had taken me to get home. He had to have left work early.
I hope you don't mind. I tracked your phone so I would know exactly when you would get home, and I think I got it just right.
He pulled a meat thermometer out of my steak, grinning broadly.
115 degrees, just like the internet said.
I was stunned. I just stood there in the doorway, shocked. He came over and kissed me, then led me by the hand over to the table and pulled out the chair for me as I sat. The table was set with fancy spring decorations, fresh fruit, a charcuterie board, and a single lit candle. In the place at the end of the table that he had set out for me, there was already salad, mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables, freshly baked rolls, and a big juicy steak already sitting on my plate. All my favorites. Next to the plate was a perfect place setting, complete with 3 forks and a perfectly folded napkin. On the counter, there was a lemon meringue pie, also my favorite for dessert. All this from the man who, to my knowledge, had never cooked anything except burgers and casseroles.
Well, go on, dig in,
he said, taking his own seat. Still in shock, I slowly reached for my knife and fork and gingerly cut into my steak. There was only the tiniest brown crust on the outside, and the meat inside was deep purple and juicy. I took a small bite. It absolutely melted in my mouth. Truth be told, it was maybe the best steak I'd ever tasted.
Any good?
I couldn't help myself. I closed my eyes and a small moan escaped my lips.
I hate myself. I'll take that as a yes,
he said, grinning again.
Snake River Farms.
I glanced up from my plate where I had been hungrily cutting a second bite. How on earth did you get Snake River Farms on such short notice?
Ah, I hate myself. Your man always has a plan, love.
He winked and tapped his nose. "No, but seriously, how did you manage all this? How long did it take you?"
Haha, I hate myself.
He tried to play it off, but there was a tinge of mania and, dare I say, desperation in his voice. I could just picture him frantically scrambling around the kitchen all day, making and remaking each part of the meal until each one was perfect. I wondered how many overcooked steaks I'd find in the fridge if I looked.
I hate myself. It wasn't so bad. They've got tutorials for everything on the internet these days.
I couldn't think of what to say, so I looked down at my plate and resumed eating. A brief silence passed.
I hate myself. How was work?
Good. It was all I could say. I was still overwhelmed, and not for nothing. This steak literally had me speechless. Another silence.
I hate myself. You know, I think I like cooking now. I could literally do all the cooking if you want.
There it was. I should have guessed. This was all a big, elaborate bribe by him to try to convince me to stay. I have no doubt that he would have literally killed himself slaving in the kitchen day after day if it meant me staying with him. It was pathetic. "Oh, I see. So you were capable of cooking this whole time, but you've made me eat burgers and casserole every Monday and Thursday for the past God knows how long."
I hate myself. Haha, yeah. What can I say? Turns out I'm a natural.
I hadn't meant it as a compliment, and he knew it. Pathetic. The meal went on. Quincy made a few more attempts at conversation, but I shut him down every time. After a while, he stopped trying and slowly sank into his chair, head down. Finally, he looked up. His eyes did not meet mine, but he spoke in my general direction.
I hate myself. Mina, I love you. But I hate myself. I want you to know.
I could tell he was actively struggling not to tick at every word.
I hate myself. You don't have to stay with me if you don't want to. I hate myself. I realize there's a bit of a power imbalance between us because you're living with me, but I hate myself. Mina.
Oh, I see how it is. You think I can't make it on my own. Is that it?
No, I hate myself. That's not it at all. I'm just saying.
No, Quincy. I don't make as much as you do. But I am also perfectly capable of living alone, and I don't appreciate you treating me like a child.
I hate myself. I'm just saying that if you want to leave, you can. I hate myself. Can help you get an apartment.
Listen, Buster, you may have lived in this house before I did, and my name may not be on the deed, but this house is every bit mine as it is yours. I help pay the mortgage, I help pay the bills, and if you think I'm gonna walk away from this without getting back every cent I put into it, you are dead wrong. I can get a lawyer, and he'll get to the judge, who will declare us married under common law, and you can pay me alimony for the rest of your fucking life. Quincy stared at me, shocked. His mouth opened and closed a few times. Then he swallowed.
Then I can move out if you want. If that's what will make you happy. I hate myself.
What was that once, sweetie? I asked, my voice sugary sweet.
I don't want to talk about it.
Tell me, sweetie. You know I just want to help you.
No.
Tell me, Quincy.
No.
What was it this time, sweetie? The time you choked on your wine at the restaurant? The time you went to the party and didn't know anybody? The time you...
All right!
He shouted and pounded his fists on the table. I stared, taken aback. It was the first time he'd ever shouted at me. It was the first time I'd ever seen him angry. And suddenly, I was scared. I was suddenly reminded that this man sitting across from me was a trained killer. He had definitely killed people in Iraq, had probably killed Zara Valencia, and he could easily kill me if he wanted to. He sat there, breathing hard for several long moments, glaring at me with death in his eyes, and I was suddenly keenly aware of the steak knife he clutched in his fist. Then, slowly, his rage began to fade, and he slumped back against his chair.
If you must know, Mina, that one was from what you said to me last night.
A long, pregnant moment stretched out between us. I know I'd been giving him a hard time for a while now, but for some reason, knowing that I was now a cause of his tics and not a remedy, well, that actually shook me. First, I wanted to shout back at him. Then I wanted to run over and hold him, just like I used to, and beg for forgiveness. Then I wanted to tell him to grow a pair and quit being a whiny little bitch. Instead, I stood up from my table and my perfectly cooked steak, and I stormed past him so fast that it blew out the candle. I practically ran into the spare bedroom, slammed the door behind me, and locked it. I didn't come out for the rest of the night. That Sunday was when everything went down. I could tell something was up right away. By the time I woke up, Quincy was already up and about making breakfast. He was acting different. Where he would usually walk on eggshells around me and do everything he could think of to avoid annoying me, now his movements were fluid and sure. He was even humming to himself.
Morning!
He said cheerfully. As I sat down at the kitchen table, he scraped some scrambled eggs and bacon onto my plate. He put butter and jam on toast, then slid it over to me on a second plate. He poured my coffee, put in the cream and sugar just the way I liked it, then leaned over and kissed my cheek before sitting down to his own breakfast and picking up the newspaper. All this without a single tick. We ate in silence. He was still humming as he read the Sunday comics, chuckling to himself every now and then. I pretended to be reading the front page, but the whole time I was watching him. I don't think I'd ever seen him go this long without saying, "I hate myself," since we first started officially dating. Once, he caught me looking at him and winked. After breakfast, he cleared my plate and stacked the dishes in the sink, then peered out of the kitchen window.
Oh, it's beautiful out. Should we go for a walk?
He said cheerily. I froze at this. Down to the river?
Nah, I'm tired of the river. Let's go to Terabithia.
I watched him carefully. Something was definitely up, but not knowing what else to say, I just responded, "Okay."
Great. Let me just go to the bathroom, then we can go.
He bustled off to the bathroom, humming to himself the whole way. My heart was pounding in my chest. Was this it? Was today the day? Was I going to end up like Zara Valencia? I looked around frantically, looking for something, anything to grasp onto. Quincy had left his laptop on the kitchen counter. I rushed around the island, opened it up, and entered the password he didn't know that I knew. What I read there made my heart sink. AIM was open. I immediately recognized Lucy's username. It was the conversation from the night before.
She's starting to get suspicious. We should do it soon.
Just say when.
Tomorrow?
Works for me. I'll have everything ready.
I knew I could count on you. Thanks again.
My heart sank into my stomach, and my blood ran cold. I jumped when I heard the toilet flush. I slammed Quincy's laptop shut and started to run back around to where I'd been sitting on the kitchen table when a thought suddenly occurred to me. I ran to the knife block. Quincy had gifted me a premium set of steak knives for my birthday. Japanese steel, wooden handle, full tang, unserrated, and razor sharp. I carefully slid one into my pocket before running back to my chair and trying to look casual.
Ready to go, babe?
Quincy smiled at me. My brain was both overflowing and empty at the same time. My palms were sweaty, and I could hear my heart pounding in my ears.
Babe?
Quincy's smile started to turn down, concerned. He still hadn't ticked. "Yeah, I'm ready." I slipped my shoes on and let him hold the door open for me as I walked out into the warm spring morning. Quincy had not been lying. It really was a beautiful day. It was April now, and the cherry blossoms along the path to Terabithia were in full bloom. Quincy was prattling on about this and that, and still hadn't ticked. Not once, all day. I just walked along silently beside him, nodding my head and smiling when appropriate. All the while, feeling the pressure and occasional prick of the steak knife I had hidden in my front pocket. Before too long, we arrived at the spot in the fence. I looked at him. He looked back at me. He still hadn't ticked. Grinning, he went over to the fence.
Let's go through here today.
I hesitated for a long moment, not knowing what to do. Eventually, I obliged, ducking under the barbed wire as he held it out of my way. On the other side of the fence, he stood to face me.
I have a surprise for you.
He pulled a blindfold out of his pocket. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but I could do nothing but stand there as he placed the blindfold over my eyes and tied it snugly behind my head.
Come on, this way.
I had to let him lead me by the hand through the grassy field, feeling like a lamb being led to the slaughter. I could still see my feet and a bit of the ground below me through the gap in the blindfold. I had only been to this part of Terabithia a handful of times, but I knew that Quincy was leading me around the hill, through a small thicket of trees, into a clearing on the other side. Here, he stopped.
Okay, stay there. Give me just a second, all right? I just got to get something ready. No peeking now.
He said, as he saw me trying to lift my head upward to get a glimpse of my surroundings from under the blindfold. I heard his footsteps walk a short distance away, then heard the zipper of his backpack open. Don't just stand there. Run, fight, do something, my subconscious screamed at me. But once again, just like with Brian, fear had frozen me solid. He's going to kill you! Move! My heart was pounding, and every throb seemed to outline the steak knife I still had hidden in the front pocket of my jeans. I heard Quincy zip his backpack back up. He was walking back toward me. This is it, do it now or never!
All right.
Quincy said slowly. I could see his feet again. I knew he was reaching for me.
You probably knew this was coming.
I whipped the knife out of my pocket and thrust it blindly in the direction of his voice. It made a meaty thud as it sank down to the hilt. Quincy made only a small noise of pain, as if he had stubbed his toe. I jumped back and tore off my blindfold. Quincy was there, frozen in place like a statue, one of his hands still reaching for my blindfold. In his other hand, he was holding a small, black jewelry box, and in between, sticking out of his chest, left of center, was the steak knife he had bought me for my birthday. I gasped, realizing what I'd done. Quincy looked at me, then down at the hilt of the knife, then back at me. Still staring, he sank down to his knees. Blood began spurting out of his chest like the hot springs we'd been to that long weekend. Dazed, he looked between me, the knife, and the jewelry box in his hand, as if unsure about which he should deal with first. The color was already draining from his face. He blinked and shook his head a few times, the way you might do if you're about to fall asleep while driving. Then, as if remembering where he was, he opened the jewelry box and held it up to me. Citrine, my birthstone, surrounded by small diamonds, set in a simple gold band. To my left, up the hill, I heard cheering, celebration. I looked and saw, silhouetted against the sky, some figures I recognized, and others whom I wouldn't learn the identities of until later. My parents, Quincy's parents, Lucy, a few other people from work, Quincy's ex, Zara Smith, and her new wife, and a few other people. Then the cheering stopped. All the figures froze in shock as they beheld the scene before them.
I hate myself,
Quincy wheezed. I did not have time to respond before he collapsed to the ground in a pool of his own blood, and the light left his eyes forever.
I just wish you would realize and then apologize. 'Cause the things that you said, they were hurtful. You made it clear to me that you need boundaries. But I feel like we're running in circles. It's like we're on and then we're off. Everything you do messes with my thoughts. And I spend countless hours overthinking, hoping one day it will sink in for you. What you had when you had me.